Hey everybody, welcome to the Outer Rim Rookie, a beginner's journey to joining the 501st and Rebel Legion. My name is Rob Williams. Today's episode is about pivoting, it's about change. Now if you've seen the last 3 episodes, me and my buddy Dan Veloso have been wanting to build one of these. A cloud car pilot costume. We really dig the idea. It would have been great to create a costume together and just zoom around in the cons. But unfortunately, me and Dan have hit a few hiccups when designing this costume, finding the pieces for this costume. It has become a bit more complicated than we expected. So right now, we're gonna put this guy on hold. I think we still wanna do the bucket at the very least with the help of Terry. But in the meantime, this one's being put on the shelf. There you go. Right there. We'll put one on the shelf and we're going to take one off. We're going to start a new project, a new costume. One that's been on my top 10 list for a little while now. And if you've seen the thumbnail, you know what it is. I got a nickname for it now. The first time I put a nickname to any of my projects. This is called Project Nyrox. And I'm building an AT-AT driver. I am super excited. Like I said, this has been on my top 10 list for quite a while now. And after going to Island FanCon, checking out my friend Giovanni's AT-AT driver costume, I just started to like it even more. Just the details, the parts. To say it's a simple costume really diminishes how complicated costume building is. But of all the costumes that are on my list, this one seems the most doable. Maybe that's the word I want to use. This one's doable. And so in today's episode, we're going to talk about the CRL, the Costume Reference Library, and talk about what it takes to build an AT-AT driver, or as some people call it, an AT-AT pilot. From here on in, I'm just calling it a driver. It's on the card, I gotta stick with that. So what's the CRL look like? All the parts and pieces to it, and the steps I need to start this project. Now, why is it called Project Nyrox? Well, that's gonna be a next episode. I'll let you do a little research on that one until then. But first, let's get into the CRL. Let's go. As I take my first look into the CRL of the AT-AT driver, I'm quickly faced with a choice I didn't expect to make. Which color am I gonna focus on? Something that is widely unknown is that the AT-AT driver did not originally have white armor, like we see in the toys or the action figures. It was in fact a light gray. To save costs on costumes, they took a TIE fighter pilot, painted it gray, then modified it in several areas. Similar to what they do with a lot of costumes during this time. I'm unsure why they chose the color gray. It is possible to avoid getting washed out against the snow in the background. Over time, as we see the overdeveloped production shots and the pictures on the toys, the gray becomes bleached white. Either way, it's another Star Wars visual trick, similar to that of Han's Hoth jacket. For 501st approval, you must choose your path, the gray armor or the white. You cannot mix and match. Both look great, but I chose white because it's most like the action figures I had as a child, and the color most people identify with for this character. With my color chosen, it's time to read over what is needed. Starting with the bucket, it is very evident that the requirements are extensive. There are a number of features that must be included, from color decals to unique greeblies. A breakdown of the bucket requires an entire video, which I'll do later down the road when I put the bucket together. When trying to choose an armor maker for the costume, I use the CRL when examining the accuracy of the different prop makers. Each one I looked at were very well done. Makers such as Sand Props and Moncal Prop Shop on Etsy. But in the end, I chose Waltz Trooper Factory for both my helmet as well as the rest of the hard pieces. I have purchased items from them before and the design was accurate and it fit into my budget. I'll have to wait a few months before I see the armor. You'll find that a lot of armor makers produce in waves. Although the waiting is going to be difficult, I find this quite reliable when it comes to quality. I also chose to have the armor come unassembled. This saves me more money in the end, but I am a bit nervous about putting it together myself. I do have a number of talented friends though who can guide me on my way. One last thing to consider with the AT-AT driver helmet is to choose whether or not I would like to have the red stripe on the rear of the mohawk or not. Again, this is optional, but I do like how it looks. And it is a simple add-on that gives it a little color. Next on the list is the balaclava. I already own a black balaclava and it is permitted. However, I chose to go with a white one. It looks better, especially since the back of the neck is exposed in the costume. The jumpsuit is a simple gray flight suit similar to that of the AT-ST driver or mechanical crew. There is an option of having a cog embroidered onto the shoulder, but since it will be covered by the shoulder armor, I chose not to do that. I went back to Wampa wear for this flight suit. It is where I purchased my Scout Trooper and Wilro Hood suit. Hero-Tex in Europe is a good choice too, but Wampa is more affordable since I'm located in Canada. Next are the gloves. If you are going the gray route of your costume, you will choose gray colored gloves with a rough texture. Since I'm going white, leather or rough type are acceptable as well. They are similar style to that of the TIE pilots or even my 9 Nun. In the CRL, they mentioned something called TIG MIG gloves. From what I understand, they are welder type gloves with a rough style. I chose to save some money and stick with the same gauntlet gloves from Amazon, which I've worked with before. A reminder that there are no visible logos or brand names on the gloves. Attached to the left glove is a 1.5 by 1.5 inch com pad. It must look like the one from the movie. I'll go into greater detail of the com pad in a later video. Sticking with the soft parts of the costume, there's an ejection harness. It is a silver gray, 2-inch wide webbing that is attached to the front and the back of the armor and goes through the legs as well as wrap around each leg at about knee level. Next are the boots. The boots of the AT-AT driver are very unique, unlike any other boot in the Star Wars universe. Nicknamed moon boots, they are a unique style that are one of the hardest parts of the costume to find. Some people have modified actual brand name moon boots and altered the color. For me though, I chose to purchase mine from Crow Props. The money I saved on the armor and gloves I invested into the boots. Crow Props is a company that many people have directed me towards, so I gave them a shot. Before purchasing or making your boots, remember that the white armor requires white boots and gray armor requires gray boots. I'm going to turn my attention back to the hard pieces, the chest and back armor. Like the helmet, the chest and the back piece of the armor, whether you choose gray or white, must match the one in the movie. I will go into greater detail in a future video, but I do plan to have some working lights and possibly a mic amp hooked up into the front somewhere. I will need to turn to some friends for guidance on the electronics. The shoulder pieces are the exact style of a snow trooper, however flipped 180 degrees with the ridges on the top instead of the bottom. Another cost-saving technique used when filming the movie. Finally, we have the hoses. It is a gray 1.25 inch ribbed hose, no matter which version you're focusing on. It goes from the canisters on the back of the helmet to the front chest piece. It must also fit the contours of the armor. I have a feeling this will be trickier than it looks. I will really have to focus on getting that right flexibility, the right length, and to avoid it getting tangled within the costume or when I put on the costume. One last option for this costume are blasters. You can choose between a DH-17 blaster or the traditional E11. I don't typically carry blasters when trooping, but it is something I might consider. So that's the CRL. Like I said, I've chosen to go with the white version of this just because it looks so much like what I've traditionally known an AT-AT driver to be. White bucket, white armor. I prefer the gray boots, but you can't mix and match as it says, so we're going to stick with that. This is going to be a lot of fun. I've already purchased probably 90 to 95% of all the pieces to go with it. But there you go. The AT-AT driver, next project, next costume, go on my wall of fame right over there. So next episode, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Project Nyrox or Captain Nyrox. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a short episode, but you're going to learn a lot. Much like my Nick Sant conversation, 10 Nun, Yale Spiel, or Duncan Hickmat, you're going to learn a lot about some guy nobody's ever heard. So thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. Until then, don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, help the channel grow. We got lots of other things on this channel, such as Jamie's Ready to Believe Ghostbuster costume, streaming of video games. Lately I've been doing Jedi Survivor, not Fallen Order. Also, we're going to be doing a new mini series called Breakdowns, where we take our costumes and we do a 5-minute breakdown of the parts, where we got it, so we can help you build your costume. Thanks for watching. Remember, armor and drivers are built on hope. Bye.